The program is Risky Business, the heart of business, the soul of rock and roll. In the studio with me, I have a special guest, and we're going to be talking about a whole new little corner and slot that's going to be occurring weekly as of May on this fabulous program, Risky Business. And the station, of course, makes 93.8 FM. We've got Megan Harrington-Johnson, Megs, in the studio this evening, who's been on the show before and will be many times to come moving forward. And she is an attorney at law for Schindler's attorneys, and they are a significant and burgeoning group of really at the front attorneys who do things very differently. And what we're going to do is incorporate in the program Risky Business a legal corner called Changing Perceptions. I think many people have got very fixed ideas of legal and legal matters and of lawyers, and it's important that we create the right end-to-end perception of what it means to manage the risks associated with legal matters in your personal lives and in your business lives and generally. And that's what we're hoping to do by speaking to the heart of legal matters on this program once a week. It's going to feature for between 45 minutes and 60 minutes of the show, and makes a real important part of the Risky Business lineup and program moving forward. And so, Megs, welcome to the show.
Hi, Bryan. Thanks for having me once again.
Fantastic. And you may remember that Megan is one of the mad swimmers who has swum a number of events and more to come. You just most recently was the Sterkfontein, wasn't it?
Sterkfontein Dam, 21 Ks, yeah.
Yeah.
Not, I wouldn't recommend it. Not
really?
A good idea.
Really, huh? Was it tougher than the swim up in Tanganyika?
I think it was tougher than Tanganyika. It was colder. We swam faster. It was longer and just generally quite draining. But I think my main problem with the swim was that myself and two of the other swimmers, I'm going to name them and shame them, Terry Bantock and John Craven, got it in our heads that the three of us were going to swim together and neither of us was going to let the other one go, which meant that we pulled each other the entire way and didn't stop, and nobody was going to drop off the pace. So lots of fun. We raised a lot of money. I think we raised approximately 80,000 Rand for an orphanage in the area, which was fantastic. I'm looking forward to many more great things with Mad Swimmer.
Wonderful. The next one up is which, Zanzibar? Or
Zanzibar's in September. November. We're looking at doing a 24-hour straight swim in September. So the record for the longest time with the most people swimming in September sometime. And then there's also Kenya coming up in July, which is a warm-up swim for the Ojos del Salado swim in November, being the highest altitude swim ever swum.
That's and that's up at 22,000 feet odd.
It's at a height higher than Everest Base Camp, so I'm most definitely not doing it. It doesn't appeal to me at all.
It's a short swim though, isn't it?
It's too short, it's too cold, the risk of hypothermia, the risk of death is just far too great, and it's also very, very expensive to get yourselves up there. Yeah.
Gosh. Talking about the world of law, firstly, tell me about Schindler's and tell the listeners about Schindler's. Who is Schindler's? Who are Schindler's? And some of the accolades and acclaim that you've achieved.
Okay, well, I personally have been at Schindler's for, I think this is my 7th year. I did articles at the firm, so I have been there from the ground up. When I started at the firm, it was fairly small. I think we had 4 or 5 partners. We're now up to approximately 13 partners and another 30 odd attorneys. I think we have another 20 candidate attorneys. So we've got an office of about 100 people. The firm has just grown exponentially through the years. And I think the reason for that is because of the way we treat our clients. Our clients keep coming back and we keep winning cases and we keep providing great service. And for us, it's about more than just the fees, and it's about more than just the work.
Yeah. It's about people.
Yeah, and I actually, when I picked Schindler's for my articles, I had been given an offer by one of the big 5 firms, and I remember agonizing over this decision because one of the big five firm, which I won't mention, had offered me double what Schindler's was offering as a salary for a candidate attorney. And I sat with this for ages and ages and ages, because you can imagine, as a student straight out of varsity, what do? Do you pick the big name and the big money, or the smaller guy who you think you'll get better experience with? And I couldn't have made a better decision. I picked 100% correctly. Hasn't been without its pitfalls, but Schindler's looks after its people, and I think I've said this to you on a number of times. It's all about the fit at Schindler's, the fit and the culture, and we all get along really well. And because of that, we are put into teams that manage to look after their clients with a completely different outlook.
It's so important, and I think that there are many stereotypes in life, and if you look out there, you mention the word salesman to people, and they immediately stereotype and get an image in their mind of what a salesman is or what they think they are, and very often incorrectly so. Having said that, of course, there are those people who will want to sell you something regardless of whether you need it, want it, or could afford it, and they'll go out of their way to push it on you and to get it on you, and that in my mind is not a salesman. That's a hustler.
Agreed.
In the same way, you will find in any profession, one hopes that as one moves up the echelons in the professional realms, that there's an elimination of the numbers of people who could be, let's say, off color or deviant. But in any space, you do find people who aren't necessarily appropriate in their behaviors, and that's just life, human nature. You get crooked accountants, you get crooked doctors, you do get crooked lawyers. It's just one of those things. You get crooked builders, and a whole lot of crooked other people in different spaces. And it's not even, let's move away from even the crooked. Let's just look at people who are driven by winning and by the money, and that's all that matters to them, and their reputation. And I think very often people have that experience, and they get shocked at what it can cost them. They often go into things blindly. That lovely saying of "I'll sue you." People have no idea what that actually entails, and that's probably the worst thing you could do in a personal capacity in any event. And I think it's so important for us to, in and through this program and in and through what we're going to do, to try and create a balanced perspective of what law is about and how it can be so much more of a value add and a preventative thing rather than simply a retrospective or reactive thing.
Absolutely. Look, I have heard probably every single lawyer's joke there is to hear. I think you've told me a couple on air once or twice before. But at Schindler's, we are not those type of attorneys. We are very upfront with our clients. I, in fact, sit with my clients before we even start a matter and say, listen, this is going to cost you X amount. At least you need to decide if this is worth pursuing.
Yeah.
I have a favorite saying, actually, where I sometimes say to the client, look, I'm happy for you to go pay for my new car that's sitting downstairs in the basement, but I don't think that this is worth it for you.
Yeah.
And I think that more attorneys need to be doing that. Rather than chasing fees, they need to be helping people out, whilst, of course, still earning a living, but making it realistically obtainable for the everyday person.
Yeah. Importantly, the program slot of Changing Perceptions is not there to showcase Schindler's. It's there really in the pursuit of positioning law in an appropriate and expanded way to the listeners, and informing people about anything from day-to-day issues of common law right through to cohabitation, through to issues of mergers and acquisitions and business rescue and rates and taxes and all these different things.
Liquidation, sequestration.
Yeah.
We're just providing advice to the everyday common man on the street that happens to tune in and has a question or two.
Yes. And we're going to make it very interactive. We're going to use social media. We're going to invite the listeners to put forward requests and questions around the day-to-day living and legal matters and how that can be best dealt with. And we're going to have an array of different guests on the show that we're going to talk to, different corporate representatives, different entrepreneurial individuals. We can look at all the different facets and angles at which law plays a role in the world of commerce, in the world of business, in the world of people's lives.
And importantly, Bryan, it's not going to just be me that's sitting here in this hot seat. I will be bringing colleagues along each week to discuss the specific area of law that has been chosen for that evening. People with skills in those specific arenas, because you must remember that law is extremely wide, and I know maybe 1/1,000,000th of it. Each attorney probably knows 1/1,000,000th of it. So many hands make light work, and we've got a great team behind us to try and help us reach that point.
Indeed. You tune to Risky Business on Mix 93.8 FM. I'm your host, Bryan Hutting. With me in the studio, I have Megan Harrington-Johnson, and we're talking just around the program that's going to roll out as of May onwards, called, well, the program inside of a program. It's a corner in the Risky Business slot because it speaks so much to the risks that prevail in business and in life, and how one can address them and deal with them in a proactive and effective manner that can actually save you money rather than cost you money. I think that's the important thing here. It's about spending money to save money, and it might seem like a crazy idea, but it's not. It's a very good idea. About being prepared and forewarned, and being prepared is a really good thing. And that's going to feature the Schindler's firm of attorneys. They will have various thought leaders and specialists appearing on the program, with Megs as an anchor, and of course me here to add my P and Q, and importantly able to invite you as we go through the program each week. We will give you heads up in advance of what is coming down and the subject matter concerned, so that you can prepare and tune in, and even email us and tweet us and add your bit and ask questions around it, so that we can make it as dynamic and as valuable as possible. The program is Risky Business, the heart of business, the soul of rock and roll. And I'm Bryan Hutting, with you in the studio up until 8 o'clock, as with every Thursday evening. And this evening, with me for not the entire show, up until about 7:15, I have Megan Harrington-Johnson, who is an attorney at law with Schindler's. And we're just chatting about the program lineup that's going to come to you as of May onwards, as included a program within a program. The program we're going to call Changing Perceptions, and it's part of just shifting people's view and perspective on the merits and value of being legally sorted and legally wise, and being able to actually know what your position is in various spaces, just from a common law perspective, within relationships, within business, and just generally. And that way you can certainly go about your day-to-day far more effectively, and in many respects in a much more cost-efficient way. Because when you get on the wrong side of the law, and I'm not talking about criminally, but the wrong side of law in litigation and other matters, you discover that it's not what you thought it was. Not so, Megs?
100%.
Your area of specialization, it's an important one. Talk to us about that.
So, Bryan, I would call myself a litigator, but
Right.
my main specialization is what we would call matrimonial or family law.
Right.
My practice consists of approximately 60% matrimonial and family law matters and 40% commercial litigation. So I am there when the fallout happens that you're referring to.
Yes.
That you just referred to now, in terms of the commercial litigation, when people don't seek the advice of our commercial drafting department to sort out their business problems before the proverbial twang hits the fan.
Yeah.
But the other half of my practice, the matrimonial law practice, is the side that I'm most passionate about. It's a strange field to be in, and a lot of attorneys turn their noses up at it because it's an extremely emotional field to be in, and extremely taxing and hard on you as a person. And I'm sure the number of jokes that there are about lawyers, there's probably 100 times the amount of jokes about divorce lawyers. And you could essentially call me a divorce lawyer. I'm a divorce attorney, but people are going to get divorced is my theory. And I think that I would like to be able to get them divorced as amicably and as easily as possible. I'm a big proponent for mediation. In fact, I'm in the process of setting up a mediation practice in consultation with a colleague of mine who's a psychologist, and we will be attempting to mediate issues that are family related and family based. So not just people being married and getting divorced, but partners that have children and are breaking up, or partners that don't have children and live together and need to move out, or divorces where there is an issue as to who's going to see the children because mom or dad doesn't trust the other party with the child. So that's a massive passion for me, and I pretty much handle that whole section at Schindler's. I've got a couple of clerks that do some of the work with me, and it's a really big field. And unfortunately, no matter how the economy is, I'm always going to be busy.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. Commercial lawyers have ups and downs depending on the economy, but people are always going to be getting married, people are always going to be having babies, and people are always going to be getting divorced. It's also a rewarding field of law. I help people with adoptions. I help people with surrogacy agreements. I help couples draft antenuptial contracts to regulate their marriage going forward. It's not just about breaking down relationships, it's also about building them up. So very rewarding, and yes, very emotionally draining and taxing, but that's why I do things like mad swimmer and run and any form of exercise I can get my hands on. It's a form of outlet for me.
Yeah. It's so interesting that we go through life in so many spheres, and I'm talking about smart, accomplished, learned people making assumptions about certain things that in fact they never should do. Speculating, making assumptions, taking things for granted, thinking that they know better, and then discovering much to their pain that they didn't. And particularly when it comes down to relationships, very often in the heat of the moment and the excitement of the romance and the excitement of the wedding ceremony and the chariot or the horse-drawn carriage or whatever it might be that they ride off into the sunset in, they can forget some of the rudiments of, do we want to have children? How many are we going to have? What are some of the things that we are just assuming that are going to sort of come together all of their own accord, and in fact can become real grounds for breakdown of relationship going down the line. And if they dealt with it up front, it doesn't mean that they shouldn't get married, but it means that they could go into the marriage with a different expectation.
Absolutely. It's just about being prepared.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's foreseeing problems before they happen. And people get carried away when they're in love, and I see it all the time. I think I've spoken to you about cohabitation and my feelings about couples living together before they get married. I just last night had to speak at a conference called Conversations in Johannesburg, where I had to dispel the myth of cohabitation once again to a group of highly educated professional people who believe that if you live together for 7 years, being the favorite number, that you are married in terms of the common law and thus are protected by the law. And that is not the case. Yeah. That's not the case at all. And people don't actually think about these things because they never think that anything bad is going to happen to them.
Mm. Interesting you say that. Often in chatting to people around businesses that fail, and people talk about, you should never go into business with friends, for example, because things go wrong. That's not true. You can go into business with friends and family and things can work out really well. What you've got to do, more often than not, those business relationships don't break down because of distrust. They break down because of trust. And because there's the trust, they don't tick all the boxes beforehand. They think that they've got each other back covered. And when, as you would know, the problems don't occur when the business is going well. The problems occur when the business isn't going well. And then selective memory and amnesia kicks in, and it's I said, you said, I thought, you thought, and that's when things go awry.
Exactly. And because those people were in a position of trust with each other, those are the people that are operating on a handshake agreement.
Correct. Yeah. Exactly.
And it's the same thing with people getting married. It's never going to happen to us. It doesn't matter. We're never going to get divorced. We don't need an antenuptial contract. We don't need to even think about this. This is a waste of money. And that is an extremely narrow-minded way of thinking. I wouldn't like to say that thinking the way that I like to think is pessimistic. I would like to think that it's positively practical, realistic and pragmatic.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. One of the risks of relationships and life is that we assume that the other party or other parties see the world as we do and expect exactly the same as we do. I've seen it in mergers and acquisitions over and over again, where everybody gets excited about the synergies and the shared space and the potential increased market share and the increased HEPS or EPS, and that we're all going down this wonderful path together, and they don't actually look to see what the differences are and where the gaps are. And that's something we have to do in any and every relationship. You tune to Risky Business on Mix 93.8 FM. I'm your host, Bryan. With me in the studio, Megan Harrington-Johnson from Schindler's Attorneys, and we're talking about an upcoming new facet to the program Risky Business, in which we're incorporating a program section called Changing Perceptions, in which we are going to speak to the heart of legal matters. And it's about heart, and it's about things that matter. And we're going to be doing that with Megan as an anchor, and many of the fabulous representatives and specialist attorneys from Schindler's appearing on the program, with individuals from corporations, big and small, to discuss matters that are really important and relevant in our day-to-day business and private lives. I'm your host, Bryan Hutting, with you up until 8 o'clock. The show Risky Business, the heart of business, the soul of rock and roll. And we're talking about a new program within a program that's going to occur as of May, moving forward, where we're going to have this lovely little legal corner called Changing Perceptions, where we speak to the heart of legal matters. And it's really about equipping you, the listener, to know a whole lot more about where you stand legally in a whole lot of spaces. And we'll invite you to ask the sort of questions that you need answered, and can have done so on air. And with me this evening, Megan Harrington-Johnson, attorney at law with Schindler's. Jumping way off to another track, this whole disaster of xenophobia that's taking place right now, really tragic and sad, and I think a symptom of many things and many frustrations and issues of non-delivery and a whole lot of things that could be contributing to this polarization that's taking place. However, the behavior is just not acceptable, and I'm concerned that the legal stand on it is not sufficiently robust.
Absolutely. I actually was in town yesterday for the hearing of a matter at the Johannesburg High Court, and saw a man having a brick thrown at him. He was obviously a Somalian, I think. And a South African tried to intervene, and a mob then went after the South African. We quickly got out of the way and walked down to where our cars were parked, which is generally off of Small Street, which is a buzzing street in the middle of the CBD, which has hundreds and hundreds of shops, which are primarily foreign owned. And I have never seen it so quiet. Every single shop was shut down. Every roller door was locked. There was not a soul to be seen. People in the CBD were terrified. And you're 100% right that it's not being dealt with correctly. What the police and the judiciary are doing is they are charging the petty criminals that are taking part or jumping on the bandwagon of the xenophobic attacks, i.e. the looters and the people that break into the shops and steal cool drinks, and charging them with petty crimes, when we really need to be going after the people that are behind this huge movement, the inciters, because right now it's bordering on genocide. And are we going to be in a situation such as Rwanda? No. We've heard rhetoric being said about people being cockroaches, etc., which is reminiscent of what happened in Rwanda in those days. And it needs to be stamped out now. The element that is inciting this genocide needs to be stopped.
Absolutely. And I think it requires a whole new level of effective leadership and mobilization of resource and focus. And I think that there needs to be some civic responsibility on behalf of a lot of people, and very cautious not to get out there. And important to say that the views expressed right here, right now, are personal views. They're not the views of Mix FM or of Schindler's attorneys or of any of the organizations that I represent. It's a discussion that we're having, that we're putting out there to the listeners in terms of just trying to raise a bit of consciousness now. And I think that right now, it's so easy for things to polarize and to be demonized. And I think it's time where sensible, sensitive human beings reach out to each other and look to collaborate and support each other. And, load shedding doesn't help. You're in the traffic and you're getting angry, and people looking to, try and get home as quickly as possible, and road ordinance goes by the wayside. We've got trade unions that look like they want to strike in mines and all these good things. And right now we've got Eskom with its non-delivery in terms of electricity. It's at its lowest that we've seen here. So lots of things that we could easily get depressed about and allow to overcome us. This is when character is birthed. This is when courage is developed. Birthplace of courage is fear. And it's in times like these that we need to really look at our mettle, and as Martin Luther King Jr. put it, the measure of a man not where he stands in times of comfort and complacency, but in times of controversy and challenge. And it's time for people to rise up and to do the right thing, and to look to be effective and reach out to each other, and even just in the form of being courteous, and not allowing this situation to push us into spaces where we don't want to be. And importantly, it's time for the leaders in appropriate positions of power to make the right moves. And I don't proclaim to have all the answers. I just ask certain questions that I think are important.
And I think they're only going to make the right moves if they're influenced by us, and one person can make a difference. And I saw something quite sweet this morning, I think on Facebook, and it was a picture that said, "More Zen, less phobia."
I like that. That's
and
lovely,
I think that's where we need to be going.
I agree with you. Absolutely agree with you. It's time for us as people to pause, reflect, and only then engage, and reflect very carefully on what it is that we're about to do. What are we doing to others? What are we doing to ourselves? And what are others doing to us? And importantly, ask the question of, what am I doing to help or hinder the situation? And every little bit helps, We can all make a difference, and that's the important thing. You tune in Mix 93.8 FM. I'm your host, Bryan Hutting, with the program Risky Business. With me in the studio for another 10 minutes, Megan Harrington-Johnson, talking about the world of law and the upcoming slot that's going to appear in the Risky Business lineup, which is changing perceptions, in which we will be speaking to the heart of legal matters with specialist attorneys from Schindler's Attorneys at Law. And, so you're going to be running the Comrades.
Now you've said it on air. Now I can't take it back. I stupidly took a bet on Saturday after one too many glasses of wine that I would run the Comrades in 7 weeks' time. I haven't really been running. So I started training on Monday. I've got 6 weeks and then 1 week of taper. So
is it a bet as in, if you don't run it, you've got to pay?
No.
Okay.
But then I would be utterly humiliated.
Yeah.
So I think that's almost worse than having to pay.
Yeah.
But I think I might have to do something with the money if I finish.
Yeah.
Perhaps pledge it to some sort of a charity.
Yeah.
Because that's how Mad Swimmer started. So, these bets are sometimes silly things, but great things can be born of them.
Absolutely.
So I'm taking my frustrations out on the road every morning at the moment, and hopefully 6 weeks will be enough time to get the mileage on my legs.
And it's a 12-hour slot you've got to finish it in.
It's 12 hours. I can
so
walk.
You can walk,
so long as I just walk really fast.
Yeah, exactly. It's a doable. You don't have to break records.
I have entered. I've grabbed a substitution entry, so
have you, yeah?
That's done. I was going to make a call in about 3 weeks, depending on how my body felt, but knowing me, I think I'll most likely do it.
Look, I think you need to also pause, reflect before you engage, and think about the impacts of it. What you don't want to do is to hurt yourself. I mean, doesn't make sense to do that. And you should check that out in respect of your back and other parts of your very important chassis that, you don't want to.
Yes, of course. I think the listeners don't realize that I broke my back 18 months ago. So this is a bit of a leap to be doing. Yeah. But I did half Ironman this year already and swam huge swims last year and this year. So I think I'm pretty healed up, but I'm going to have to, I'm going to have to keep an eye on it.
I think so. Yeah, very definitely. So we're coming to the end of your portion of the show, and I'm going to move on and entertain my listeners with music in your absence and for the last 45 minutes or so. But just in and around the whole concept of changing perceptions and speaking to the heart of legal matters, your thoughts on what people should be most concerned about in their day-to-day lives about legal issues if they're starting a new business, an entrepreneurial business on their own, or going into a relationship, whether it be a marriage or cohabitation.
Writing.
Really?
Everything is to be in writing. Doesn't matter if it's your best friend, your brother, your sister, your wife. You record the terms of whatever agreement you've reached in writing, because how I see the agreement and how you see the agreement could be two totally different things. People have completely different frames of reference, and where you don't have something regulating a form of relationship, whether it be contractual or romantic, problems can happen.
Would a set of very well documented minutes be a reasonable replacement for a formal signed contract of law?
Only if signed off by both parties.
Yeah.
Because if I'm sitting in a meeting with you, Bryan, and I write down the minutes, and you don't sign off on them, it's my perception of the minutes.
What's the issue? So today, email is deemed a legal and binding document, is it not?
Correct.
So if I email you something and I do the send and receive receipt stuff, and I keep copies of that, so I know that you've read it, and you've opened it, and you've received it and opened it. You don't reply. You've just read it and left it. Is that tacit acceptance of what's contained therein?
No, the acceptance would have to be contained in an email reply.
Okay.
Because remember, it's very easy to switch off the read receipt on an email.
What if I sent you an email to no? But let's say I've received that I've received the read receipt. One, that you've received it, and two, that you've read it, that you've opened it. So let's assume you've done that. And in the mail, I've indicated that, Megan, this constitutes our agreement as I understood it. If there's anything different, please would you contact me accordingly. In the absence of that, I'm assuming that your non-response will indicate that this is an acceptance of it.
That could most definitely be argued to be valid, yes.
Yeah.
There's been recent case law to that effect in the High Court, because everything is done via email these days.
I know. SMS, how binding is that?
SMS as well.
Interesting.
You can get yourself into a lot of trouble with SMSs too. So whilst I say writing is very important, you've also got to think twice before putting pen to paper or finger to keypad.
Mm. Very much so. In fact, and particularly, I think my advice to any listener out there who is a big email person, do not use email as a form of conflict resolution.
Absolutely not. You never respond in anger. Ever. I myself am guilty of that, and sometimes have to actually walk away from my desk and leave my office and take a breath and consider what I'm going to say before I respond, because it's very easy to throw vitriol at somebody through a computer screen.
It is, yeah. And the thing is, I can say something to you, and in a year's time we might not quite remember the words and what was said, and it sort of eases away. In writing, it's there into perpetuity. I can take it out in 20 years' time and it hasn't changed a bit. It's not like wine in a bottle or in a cask. It doesn't age or change or disappear.
Absolutely. And if I say something horrific to you and I CC in anybody, I'm defaming you, and I'm guilty of defamation. So 100% be careful before pressing send.
Yeah, absolutely. Write the I hate you mail, but then
save it to your drafts folder.
Definitely.
Or send it to your mom, but so long as it's not I hate you mom.
Yeah, no, exactly. We run out of time for you. You've got to go. You've got an engagement this evening, and I'm really looking forward to you joining me as the anchor on the sub program of Risky Business, Changing Perceptions, and that'll be as the beginning of May. And in the interim, we'll obviously get time together and plan it and schedule it out, and we'll inform the listeners well in advance. And there's going to be a lot more we're going to wrap around it and wrap around Risky Business. It's going to keep bringing better and better programs for you, more and more informative ones. We're going to cut across genres of industry and business so that we can give you lots of different views and perspectives, and bring in the right people to say the right things and help people get a better view and handle on it. Any parting shot to the listeners before you go?
I just want to say I can't wait. I'm so excited. I love the sound of my own voice. So let's bring it on. I think we're going to have a great collaboration.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it. Reminding you all that if you're not with the ones you love, then love the ones you're with, and take time to show and tell the ones you love just how much you do. Take some time to love and care for yourself, and stop and breathe and just pause. And in these frenetic and busy and frantic times, and things not always going the way we want them to, remember, we can't always control what happens to us, but we can control how we choose to respond to it and how we respond to it. And importantly, don't let these scenarios that are playing out in different parts of the country right now polarize us negatively and cause us to demonize and to fall into spaces of anger and malice. It's actually, this is the time for character to really rise up, and for people to reach out to each other across the lines and across the bars and across the genres and the races, the creeds, the colors. And it's time for us to stand once again and be firm and clear of what we want as a nation and what we want as a people, and the freedom for people to live in and to prosper in harmony. And it's not a lost dream. People can and do achieve it, and it's about our choices of how we deal with what life delivers to us. We're going out with a track called Whispers in the Dark, in case you're out there in a moment of load shedding, or moments or minutes or hours of load shedding, by the band Mumford & Sons. And just take care of each other.